it has now been a month since I started on the carnivore diet, so I figured I'd give an update for where I'm at. In my last video, just about 2 weeks ago, I pointed out that I weighed the same as I did when I started the diet, but that is no longer the case. As of this morning, I am down 10 pounds. So while I didn't start off losing weight, in the last 2 weeks I've lost 10 pounds. Also in that previous video I mentioned I rode 10K, my first 10K since 2017. Well, now I've tacked on 2 more 10K rowing sessions, and the last one was even under 1 hour for the time. That's right, I finished in 58 minutes and 59 seconds. Easy enough to remember. Oh, and that's 59.0 seconds, so there's not even an extra tenth of a second on there. Finally, in the previous video, I mentioned that I've been doing approximately 36-hour long fasts. Well, immediately after that video, I did a 66-hour long fast. It, like my other fasts, started off completely unplanned. I just didn't eat anything because I wasn't hungry. Then by the end of the second day, I knew I could push it through 3. And I could have continued further to get a full 72 hours, but that would have actually ended up with me eating too late in the day, since I wanted to be finished eating well before I went to bed, especially because when you break a fast, sometimes that does result in some intestinal issues for a few hours. Also, I am now 100% carnivore. So last time I mentioned I used up the last of my cheese and I wasn't going to buy any more. Well, now I've also finished up the last of my garlic cloves, and I don't want to buy any more of that yet either. I do like garlic since it gives food a nice kick, but something tells me that that burning sensation from garlic may be causing at least some level of inflammation. I don't know yet, so I'll keep doing the elimination side and we'll find out later. So when I reach all my goals, I'll almost certainly add garlic back in and see how I do with it. But for now, I've just found upping the amount of butter is more than enough to provide all the condiments that I need for both eggs and meat. One thing I wanted to point out was doing the rowing. There's definitely a difference in how my body is handling the exercise this time around than back in 2017. In 2017, I just remember trying to hurt myself as much as I could by pushing as hard as I could on the machine until my muscles were screaming at me. But then I would just go and eat whatever junk was lying around. I wasn't worried about my diet. I actually still lost a ton of weight during those 3 months that I was doing super hardcore rowing. By the end of March 2017, I was about 15 pounds lighter than I currently am today. But because my diet never changed, as soon as I was burned out on the rowing machine and never wanted to look at the thing again, I gained back all of that weight relatively quickly, within 2 to 3 months. Still, the pain of doing those rowing exercises is kind of what's stuck in my mind. And I have to say, this time around, it just doesn't hurt anywhere near that. Now, some of it is because I'm not pushing myself that hard, and I'm not going every single day as hard as I can either. So at minimums right now, I'm taking Sundays off from rowing. Today is Sunday, so I don't know when you're watching it, but as I record this, it is Sunday. And so I didn't row at all today. But even on the days when I do row, I'm perfectly fine just stopping if I get a kilometer in and just feel super low energy that day, or if my muscles are really painful. It's just they haven't been, and I haven't been tired. So even after the first day when I did my 10K of the season, the next day I did 1K in the morning. Then I went back and did a 500-meter sprint a few hours later. And when I say sprint, I mean I really pushed it for those 500 meters. My normal pace is around 3 minutes per 500 meters, and I did that sprint at a pace of 2 minutes and 17 seconds. The thing to remember is that's 1 day after doing my first 10K in 5 years. I still did that sprint. So while I did it, my muscles were a little tender, but they didn't ache, they didn't burn, they didn't feel like I was close to injury. Instead, and while this is probably 99% mental, I'll admit right off the bat, it almost felt like because I was eating the ground beef in the evening after I did the 10K, that as I was rowing, the protein from my meal was literally being sucked into my muscles. So what happened with my row when I broke the hour, when I did the sub-hour 10K, is that after I got to the 5K mark, and it was before 30 minutes had passed, I decided, hey, I want to push to see if I can maintain this. And I actually hit a perfect rhythm. People who exercise a lot probably know what I'm talking about, but for those who don't, it's kind of like you slip into the zone. My muscles felt absolutely no stress at all. My rhythm was continuous, and it was literally like there was no effort involved. And it was like a clock just doing its thing in the right order, keeping on going. Now, what makes that funny to say is that I clearly know it wasn't effort-free because I could see the sweat soaking through my clothes. And when I exhaled, it would blow these droplets of sweat that were dripping off the end of my nose all over the readout screen that was in front of the rowing machine. Right? So clearly my muscles were working hard, but my breathing felt perfectly normal. Everything was clicking like just a well-oiled machine. Like it's a stereotype, but it's true. When you're in that zone, it runs. So all of that lasted from the 5K mark all the way up to the 8.5K mark. So at that point, it began to feel a little grindy. But I've done enough video game grinds that mentally I could stick through it, even though, when things get grindy, they get boring. That's the main thing with my brain is I want something new and interesting. But I've done enough, as I said, with video games where you have to grind to get a specific goal. So I stuck through it mentally. And physically, although it started to hurt a little bit at that point, just tiredness hurt, I never dropped below the 3 minutes per 500 meter pace. So it didn't matter that I was feeling a little tired. It was really only tired in relation to how easy it had been before, but not really tired at all in the long term. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it does. So for the last 250 meters, I actually got an energy burst again, and I wanted to just sprint it all the way to the end as hard as I had the previous day, or actually it was about a week before when I did that 500 meter sprint. But I knew that after having gone roughly 9.5 kilometers at this point, that if I sprinted too quickly, then I might not have enough energy to make it all the way to the finish line at the pace that I wanted to go. I wanted to break that hour. And so I held off until I was about 100 meters from the end, and then I just went all out because I still had that energy. I wanted to get it as hard as I could at the very, very end. So again, that's something, just doing all of that at the end of almost to 10K, when you do a 100-meter sprint at the end, was something I couldn't have even dreamed of doing 2-3 weeks ago. To do that burst at the end would have been so beyond anything that I was capable of. Yet right now, I feel like give me 2 more weeks and my baseline is going to be 10K per day, every day of the week. Except, as I said, I will be taking Sundays off. I want to give myself a recovery day for sure, at least one. And depending on how I feel, I'll add in 2 if I need that. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at physically right now. So the question might be how and what am I eating to get those results. So as I mentioned, I've used up all the stock of food that wasn't carnivore, and I won't be going back to that, at least not until I'm extremely healthy again. For now, I usually don't eat anything until about 2 p.m. And at that point, I usually cook up about 4 eggs with 2 tablespoons of butter mixed into them. I do a little bit before, so everything is greased up. And then as I get it to serve, I put another tablespoon on top of the eggs and mix it all up. I use scrambled eggs for that. That's just the way that I prefer them. But 4 eggs, 2 tablespoons of butter. So after that, I see how hungry I am. Sometimes I'm completely full and don't eat anything after the eggs. But usually I'm still a little bit hungry, so I'll eat some ground beef or maybe a steak. Both of those I'll use butter for seasoning again. And depending on the size of the portion, I'll use more or less butter. I don't care how much butter I'm eating because butter's fine for me, right? So I just eat that until I'm full. And if it does require seconds, which sometimes it does at the end, like the day after a really long row, then I might be a little more hungry than before. But if it takes seconds, I will eat seconds. I don't tell myself not to. There's no reason to limit myself when it comes to that. So I just eat until I'm full. When I'm satiated, that's when I stop. And I should also note that I usually have at least 1 package of bacon in my fridge. And whenever I feel like it, instead of doing ground beef or a steak, I might do a package of bacon that I cook up instead, right? Or if I'm really hungry, I'll just eat both. Again, it doesn't matter. That's not the quantity at that point. I'm listening to what my body says it needs. And because I'm not eating the carbs, the signals that my body is sending are actually legit. If they're saying they're hungry, then that it actually needs something. If it's saying it's hungry when you're under carbs, it just means you haven't fed me anything yet. You've given me junk that's just passing through. I'm just throwing it into the fat storage, but I'm not actually feeding on it. So that's the difference there. Eating protein and especially fat, you actually get full. Your body gets what it needs, right? So another thing I should point out is I just started to get meat delivered from Butcher's Box. This is obviously not sponsored or anything, but I've experimented through Butcher's Box with some other cuts of meat that I've never had before. So I tried some ground bison, for example, and it was okay, but I prefer beef. The taste of beef is better, but it could also be that I'm just not used to buffalo yet. I do think if I order buffalo again, I will mix it with the ground beef, though, because I definitely prefer the taste of beef so far. And I know also from watching videos from Dr. Ken Berry that organ meat is extremely important if you're doing a diet, right? It's organ meat's where you're going to get most of your nutrition. And to be honest, I hate the taste of liver. The last time I tried it, I could not stand it at all. So that's been a bit of a detriment because I want to get the nutrients from the organ meat. But I've actually found that liverwurst is actually pretty decent. And this could be because my palate has cleansed enough that liver is actually not something that I hate anymore. But I'm not yet ready to experiment and try it yet. If I do get some liver, though, I can probably ground it up and mix it with some ground beef as well anyway. Kind of like what I'm planning to do with the bison. And I probably wouldn't be able to tell at that point and still would be getting the nutrients. Or, I could just add more and more butter to it, since butter actually does help a lot with the taste of something. If a piece of meat is too gamey, then adding a little bit more butter, I can eat it just fine. All right, so what is next? Well, in a couple of weeks, I'm supposed to have an ultrasound done on my kidneys. This is because of my persistent high blood pressure, which has been a problem since 2020 minimum. And even though it definitely has improved somewhat over this past month, it's still not low enough where I can even begin to consider asking to stop medication on it. So I'm definitely going to be keeping that appointment with the ultrasound on my kidneys. And a few days after that, I'm scheduled to get blood labs done. And then my nephrologist and I will be looking them over on the first week of September. So I'm looking forward to what those results will be. Although I probably won't be mentioning the specifics of what I'm currently doing with diet for the nephrologist. I'll probably just keep it a vague, I'm doing a diet and exercise, and just leave it at that. Now, you might be wondering, why do I not want to just be open with the doctor? Well, if you saw the last video, you kind of know part of the reason why I don't want to be open with the medical professionals. But this nephrologist that I'm going to be seeing isn't my normal one either. My normal nephrologist, unfortunately, was ill. He's recovering from that, so they had to reschedule a bunch of his appointments. So I'm seeing a new nephrologist, same practice, but a different doctor. And I don't know anything about this nephrologist I'm seeing. I actually, at this point, don't even know if it's a male or female nephrologist. Could be either one. I know they have both genders working at the clinic there. But secondly, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I talked about Dr. Berry. He's recently done a video about medicinal, or I guess medical gaslighting. And I realized that my hesitancy to talk about my doctor is not just because of the stuff that the nurse had done, but also because many of the doctors that I've had in my life have done the same things that Dr. Berry brought up in that video. So I counted through, and I think off the top of my head, I've had at least 7 different family doctors through the years. And only 2 of them would be doctors that I would say would listen to me or bother to help me out in any way, or went and actually did the labs that needed to be done to find specific issues and find the results for them. The rest of them have all been egocentric, overworked, or just completely uncompassionate people. And since I don't know who I'm going to be dealing with, I'm again planning on just not saying anything if they ask me how my labs got so good, which I fully expect that they're going to be doing, because I can tell subjectively how much better I feel and objectively how much less weight I have, how much skinnier I am, how much more muscles I have. The markers have to be going up given the improvements. Now, they might not be up as much as I want them to be yet, but they're definitely going to be going up. And so, again, if they ask me how that happened, I'll just be diet and exercise and not give any details unless they really, really demand it. But I'll see how that goes. Again, I'm not going to be making the mistake of being open and honest with a medical professional until I know for sure that they're not just crazy lunatics devoted to a cult-like interpretation of something they're probably misremembering that they read in a book 12 years ago after they were staying up all night cramming for their anatomy class. And with that, I hope you all have a wonderful day.